Warm welcome back. This is Channel Africa, the voice of the African Renaissance, and the time is 11 minutes past 10 Central African Time. The program that you're listening to is African Dialogue, and we are coming to you live on the frequency 9625 kilohertz shortwave on the 31 meter band to Southern Africa. You can also listen to us via audio streaming on www.channelafrica.org, and of course you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. Now, it's been said that the next world war will be fought over water, and that very soon much of Southern Africa will be facing increased risks of water shortages. However, much of the answer to combating climate change and understanding the use of water lies in water that's beneath the ground, within rocks and other formations. And this water is known as groundwater and also referred to as a liquid treasure. Now, to understand the uses of it and the importance of this natural resource, but also in terms of monitoring systems such as geographic information systems, which sounds like quite a mouthful, we're joined on the line by Andiswa Mlisa from the Earth Sciences Consultancy Organization, Umvoto Africa. Andiswa, a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Zeenat.
All right. Well, very quickly, just tell us a bit about Umvoto Africa. What is it exactly that the company does?
Well, our key expertise are in earth science, but specifically in hydrogeology. We provide access to groundwater for municipalities and also for provide expert opinions on policy and regulation to the Department of Water Affairs and such authorities, with a big focus on groundwater, of course. Mm-hmm. But we also have a big interest in georisk reduction. Now we're talking about earthquakes, volcanoes, and so forth. Our biggest strength, I guess, especially when it comes to groundwater, is the geology background that all our employees have, especially the structural geology, which also links us to the geohazards work that we do.
All right. Now, you're mentioning quite a few terminology there that we probably do not understand. No, it's okay. Well, that's what we're here for, to unearth and to unpack all that's involved in this discussion. What do we mean when we're talking about hydrogeology? What is it that you're talking about specifically?
We're mainly talking about water that's underground.
Okay.
Because most people are aware of surface water. But with hydrogeology, you're more looking at the underground water. We call it groundwater. The general public will know it as boreholes or well points that you find, and there's a variety of the depths that they go to. But specifically, it's the water that's actually kept in the rocks underground.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of groundwater specifically, because that is forming part of our discussion, just how much of groundwater is there in South Africa? Or are there statistics available as to just how the depth of groundwater in South Africa or Southern Africa as a region? Do we know?
What we know for sure is that it's underutilized.
Okay.
That's the key thing. I think currently of the water resource in South Africa, only 13% of that is groundwater, of what is currently being used. You looked at the region like the Western Cape, the area with Cape Town linking into the Eastern Cape, Port Elizabeth area. We've got a huge quantity of what we call deep fractured rock aquifers, which have a lot of water into it. I do not have a figure in my head that when all the groundwater resources in the country are put together, how much that would be. Because one of the key challenges we have is accessing it, because some of it is really deep, so it hasn't really been accessed properly, and the resource hasn't been really evaluated properly in the country. Mm-hmm. Mainly because of the perceptions that are around the usage of groundwater. People do not trust it, and I can understand because they don't see it. It's much easier to believe in something or trust in something that you can see, like the dams and the rivers. You can see when there's water and when there's no water. Mm-hmm. You can easily monitor for yourself when the levels are going down in your dam, even if it's your farm dam or your house dam, just for gardening purposes. But when it's groundwater, you've got absolutely no idea in terms of how much water you actually have. So the public and the authorities have very little faith in groundwater. Mm. So the studies that are required to do a proper evaluation in terms of how much we actually have in groundwater as the country hasn't been done properly. But we know for sure, for the small studies that we've done, the explorations one that we've done, that we've got quite a lot, and it hasn't been tapped in properly.
Okay. And is groundwater good? Let's challenge those perceptions then. Is groundwater good water? Is it clean water? Is it water that's free of chemicals or drinkable?
It all depends on the type of rock that you're drilling into, where you're doing your exploration. There are aquifers that for example, the one that everyone sort of like knows is if you've got your groundwater close to the ocean and it's very shallow, you're likely that you're going to tap into the seawater. So you're going to get, your groundwater will be salty, so you cannot use it. That's the key one. But also some types of rocks have too much iron in them or high acidity in them. But you can treat it, of course. So you put a treatment plant, just like you will do when you've got a dam. You treat the water. In some of the aquifers, the water is very clean. You drill it, it comes out of the ground, and you can drink it there and then.
Well, I mean, maybe you could also assist me. Over the vacation period, I was actually down in Cape Town, and we went up to Table Mountain, and also we visited the Kirstenbosch Botanical Gardens.
Yes.
And there was actually a spring there with absolutely clear water, and it said that that's the water that runs from Table Mountain down into these gardens. Would that be an example, perhaps, of groundwater, or they said it's actually perfectly drinkable? But would that be maybe just a form or an example?
It's definitely one of the examples.
Okay.
That's for the Table Mountain water that would flow into Kirstenbosch. It comes out of what we call the Table Mountain group. One of the key aquifers being the Peninsula Aquifer, and the water in it is very clean. And it's usable. Sometimes the pH is a little bit high, but it's definitely drinkable. And the springs in Table Mountain, when we go for hikes, we drink from those springs.
Very interesting indeed. Why do you think there's just so little information regarding groundwater? I mean, why is it that there is this negative perception? Obviously, you said because people cannot see it, so therefore they're a bit hesitant to accept it. But why do you think there's so little exploration being done? And only now it seems like, there seems to be a hype about it.
I think that with the monitoring systems, or lack thereof, that's been one of the key things that have caused the distrust and the way that the exploration has been done in the past. So two things, the way that it's been done. Mainly farmers have been the biggest users of groundwater, and farmers in the country are still using groundwater better than other authorities in the country. So for decades, farmers have been using groundwater, but they haven't put in place monitoring systems to actually build up the track record in terms of why would your borehole go dry? And what do you need to do to make sure that it doesn't get dry? So if you put a monitoring system in place, you are able to tell that, well, during the rainy season, for example, you don't need to be using your groundwater.
Right.
You can switch your borehole off and let it replenish again. And during the dry season, then you go into your groundwater. And also, how much do you pump out of the groundwater? So in most of the municipality schemes, especially the rural schemes that have been done in the country, the management of the groundwater, the tools haven't been developed, and the monitoring was not in place. So they'll go dry. They'll drill shallow boreholes because they did not understand the right aquifers that you need to drill into, and they'll just pump them dry. And so that creates the perception that it's not sustainable. And no one wants to invest in anything that's not sustainable, right?
Absolutely.
So what the studies that have been done to date, that have been properly done, especially with the proper groundwater management, has begun to show was that with correct management, one can actually use groundwater as a resource, as an additional resource. It started, of course, by being seen as an alternative supply for when there's a drought. So when there's a drought, the authorities will definitely go to groundwater because they view that they do not have any other option. But they're slowly moving out of that because some municipalities have gone the extra mile to make sure that it's integrated into their formal water supply instead of just being an emergency supply.
Very interesting indeed. And Andiswa, we're going to be picking up on this after the economics update, which is coming up now shortly with Mike Ntuli. Also talking about what it is that you do at Mvuto Africa. I know that you're specializing in geographic information systems, so obviously we're going to be elaborating on that role. And why is it so important to have geographic information systems and monitoring systems in place? I know you've outlined a little bit about it, but we're going to explore that further. So that's coming up a bit later on in the program. But for now, please stay on the line with us. Coming up is Economics Update with Mike Ntuli here on Channel Africa, the voice of the African Renaissance.